If you have a pity party and you're the only one at the pity party, that is a boring party. And I'll tell you what, it is a very hard party to leave. You need someone to come to that party, grab you by the hand, and say, hey, we are getting out of here. Let's go. Hey, what's up? Justin Rucker here, and welcome to The Ruckus, where we talk about being a person of influence, and how you can impact the culture and the world around you. Today, we're going to jump right in. We're going to start talking about how to ditch the victim mentality. How to ditch the victim mentality. Now, part of the reason we do this show is because we want to give you the tools, to give you some hopeful lessons and practical things you can do to be an influential person and to influence, to impact, and to inspire the world around you, and really to have a cultural impact with your life. And the thing about a victim mentality is a victim mentality will absolutely rob you and take away from your ability to inspire, to lead, to influence, and to be a light. The victim mentality, I know when you say that, it has a really kind of strong connotation to it. And I think that's important because whether or not you just have a complete victim mentality or whether there's little hints of it hidden in some of your thinking, you have to get rid of it. You've got to uproot even the smallest little seed of that thing. It will tear you apart. It will rob you of your purpose. It will pull you off of the path that you are on, right, to fulfill the purpose that God has put in your heart and to chase after your dreams and to be the person that you've been called to be. So we're going to talk about ditching the victim mentality and why it's important for you to be able to be a cultural influence. I mean, realistically, there are a lot of things right now that are at war for influence in our culture. I'd say probably the biggest thing at the time of recording is politics. Right, we're in the middle of an election season here in the U.S., and every 4 years, this becomes the dominant cultural movement. Our time, when you look on the news and you look on social media, it gets a little more tense around the dinner table, having those kinds of discussions. You feel the tension in the culture. Even being on a college campus, you can feel the heaviness and the tribalism, right, and the passion behind people as they get behind their political parties or candidates, however they look at it. They represent very different ideologies, right, very different backgrounds. So, you have parties that have fundamental differences in terms of core beliefs of how government should be run, of personal freedom, what freedom should look like, right? Of the economy, how money should be spent, how your money should be regulated, right? There's all these different things that come into play. So it absolutely is important to be involved, right, and make decisions for your country and for the nation and for these policies. But I will say there is one thing in common with both parties. There is a common message that both parties push and present. And we as the public and as a population, we tend to eat it up like candy, right? As different as the parties are, as radically opposed to each other as they come off to be, there is one fundamental message that's the same from both parties. And that message is this: if you don't elect us, you're in trouble, right? It's game over if we're not in office. Right? If we're not in office, you will lose your freedom. If we are not in office, you will lose your money. If we are not in office, you will not be able to be successful. You will not be able to chase your dreams. We have to be in office. Otherwise, the opposition, right, is going to basically put an end to your ability to be successful. And that's the message that both of them push, understandably, because it's a war. It's really a war for your mindset, and it really is a war for your heart. And it really is a war for the way that you think so they can pull you over so you can vote for them. And I just want to tell you that if you believe, right, that whatever political party is in office is going to be the defining factor in whether you can be successful in your life or not, or whether you can be happy or not, that is a lie. And that is a victim mentality. Even if it doesn't feel like, hey, I'm a victim, what the victim mentality is, and let me help you identify it. I want to help you identify really everything a victim mentality is, not just the obvious, woe is me, man, my life is horrible, I can't do anything because of everyone else. That's obvious, right? But I really want to break down what a victim mentality is so that you can be able to identify any trace of it that you have in your mind. Hopefully identify it, uproot it, and ditch it. So when I talk about the victim mentality, what I mean, a victim mentality is a core belief, right? You typically get this core belief after something painful happens to you or you experience an injustice like abuse or someone takes advantage of you. We develop these core beliefs that say, I am where I am because of what was done to me. Or a lot of people will believe I am where I am because someone else is where they are. Ultimately, what the victim mentality does is it puts responsibility for your situation, for your life, for your circumstances, whatever it is, that you're thinking about, and whatever it is that you're struggling with in your life. What the victim mentality does is it shifts responsibility from you to another person, right, or to an organization, or to the economy, or to the state of the world. And whether or not you're just outright crying about it, being like, oh, woe is me, or whether it is just a core belief that, hey, my success is dependent on these factors, I want to tell you that if you have that core belief, you're being lied to, right? That is a victim mentality. That is a slave mentality, right? You are called to be free, right? Be free. We are free, right? You have the power and the control to take responsibility for your life and to be free, right? To make decisions for your life that align with your God-given purpose, right? You get to make the decision to pray and go to church. You get to make the decision to live out the purpose that God's put in your heart. You get to make the decision to chase your dreams. You get to make the decision to be a difference, right, in the world around you, and to be an impact and to be a light, right, around the midst of darkness in our culture. You get to make that decision. And the second that you put the responsibility for that decision in someone else's hands, it's game over, right? It becomes a slow little poison that slowly eats away, right, at your identity, where you start to identify rather than as someone who is free, right, as someone who is purpose-driven, as someone who has the Spirit of God in them, right, as someone who is a conqueror. You begin to slowly identify as someone who is defeated, as someone who is bound, right, as someone who is a failure. You see, and I'm using some extreme language here, but it's because it's true, right? You have to identify this in your heart. You got to identify it in your life. If you believe you are where you are, right, because someone else is where they are, you have the victim mentality, right? And this is constantly even what our politicians culturally are pushing right now, right? This is why we need people to step up and be a light. Most of our politicians, some of their biggest arguments are, for example, the economy, right? Well, if you're struggling financially, well, it's because of these rich people or because of these rich corporations. Or likewise, right, if you're wealthy and you don't like how the economy's going, well, it's the fault of the people milking the system and welfare. They're the ones bringing the system down. Look, you can argue all day. You can throw facts. You can throw numbers. We all have opinions about that. But at the end of the day, if your financial situation is dependent on who is in office, or if your financial situation is dependent on someone else or some other circumstance, you're always going to be at the mercy of someone else, right? But if you take responsibility for your financial situation, and you take responsibility for the decisions you make with your money, right, for the decisions you make with your time, right, and how you spend your time and how you invest your time, if you spend it doing productive things, or if you spend most of it doing things that don't necessarily add any kind of monetary value to your life, right? If you do that and you make poor decisions, well, then you are always going to be a victim. See, the second that you take responsibility for your life and for your situation is the second that you gain the power to change your circumstance, right? There's a saying that I learned. I went to this thing called The Project. And one of the core phrases that we say is, I am responsible for everything in my life. And that gives me the power and the control to change my circumstances. Why is that important? Because the thing about adopting a victim mentality is that what it causes us to do is it causes us to delay responsibility. Responsibility that we can take, right, here and now to make the changes that are necessary in our life. What we do is we put that responsibility on other people. And the thing is, most people are not going to be responsible for your situation or for your life. If someone has wronged you or hurt you, and you are waiting and you've put the responsibility for your healing on them to respond, chances are you'll probably be waiting for a long time, right? Now, I'm not saying that bad things don't happen to us. I mean, let's make that clear. We all become a victim at some point, positionally, right? Life gives you great things and life gives you hard things. You will be taken advantage of by people. You will be hurt by someone. Someone you love might take advantage of you. Unfortunately, a lot of us have experienced abuse, right? That was not our fault. It wasn't deserved. It was an injustice. And unfortunately, that's what happened. I'm not saying that we don't fall victim to circumstances. I'm not saying that you're never put in a position where you are legitimately a victim. What I'm saying is you do not have to identify as a victim, right? If you have been kicked in the mud, you do not have to identify with the mud. Look, you could be kicked in the mud, knocked down. You could be in pain, hurting, but you can still have that identity like, look, I'm getting up. I will get up one day. It might take me a day, it might take me a week, it might take me a month, but I will get up because I am a person who gets up. You see, there's a difference between falling victim and identifying as a victim and adopting that mentality, right? There's nothing wrong with taking a pause and taking a breather when you have become the victim to something. But if you're going to stop and adopt that identity, it's going to be like a poison that just rots in your spirit and in your mind and in your identity. And it's going to rob your future from you. You cannot identify as a victim. You cannot afford to do it. For your life, for the sake of the people around you, and for the sake of the world that needs you to turn on the lights and to be an influence. Do not adopt the victim mindset. Do not adopt that victim mentality, right? And the second that you feel tempted to do that, the second that you feel tempted to be like, well, this situation's horrible and it's because of this person, figure out what you need to do to heal and heal, right? Don't put that responsibility on other people because chances are that person will probably let you down, okay? So while we do become victims at some point to our circumstances, it doesn't mean you have to identify as a victim. It doesn't have to be a mark over your life. You can overcome. If you want to be free, you'll be free, right? But if you want to stay in the mud, you'll stay in the mud. If you want the chapter to turn, if you want the page to turn in your life, it will eventually turn. But if you're stuck on that page and you're so hurt that you never want that page to turn, that page will never turn. You got to make a decision that you want to turn the page. So ditch the victim mentality. How do we do that, right? Because it'd be one thing to sit up here and say, I'm not a victim. I never adopt it. The truth is we all struggle with the victim mentality at some level. I don't care how dominant you feel. I don't care how alpha, let's go, you feel. I don't care how strong you are in your character and how stoic you can feel. Oh, we all wrestle with the victim mentality at some level, right? But not all of us stay there. Not all of us adopt that. And I want to give you a couple of tools to be able to identify and to be able to ditch it as soon as you can sense it, right? As soon as that little thing gets on you, you flick it off, you kick it off, and you throw it to the other side of the room. Okay. So number one, right, if you want to overcome the victim mentality, is you have to remember your purpose. It's not about you. Okay? You are not put on this earth, right, to just live for yourself and do your thing and make yourself happy and just ignore the rest of the world. You have a purpose that is bigger than you, right? And when you start thinking about your purpose, all of a sudden your identity starts drifting towards your purpose, right? Your purpose to be a light, to be an influence, right? To represent God, right? And God's love and God's grace to people, right? To be someone who is a positive influence in their church and in their community and in their home, right? And in the culture. Right, the purpose to be productive, right, to do something productive with your hands and with your life that contributes, right, to society and contributes to the world around you. You see, when you begin to focus on who you are and what God's created you to do, your purpose, that begins to fill your identity, right? It's what you feed. If you feed your purpose, you will drift towards your purpose. If you feed your inner victim will grow and your life will drift towards that. So number one, if you've been knocked on your feet and you're feeling it's really hard for you to overcome that mentality that, man, I'm stuck here because of this situation, or I'm stuck here because of this person, or I'm stuck here because of what this person did to me, or man, this person wounded me so much, I don't know that I'll ever recover. If you struggle with that in your mind, and that's a natural human response, by the way, if you're struggling with that, start thinking about your purpose. Start looking in the mirror and telling yourself your purpose. Man, I was put on earth to help people find God. I was put on earth to help people discover their purpose and become people of influence. I was put on earth to empower young people who change the world, right? I was put on earth to inspire and to impact, right? And to be a light in the darkness. Remind yourself of your purpose, right? Number two is you got to remember that you are not alone. Number two, you got to remember you are not alone. Now, often when you're wounded, right, or if you're feeling like a victim, chances are you want to isolate, right? A lot of us, that's how we cope when we're hurting, when we're in pain, when we're desperate, when we've been wronged, or a situation has happened in our life that is negative, that is beyond our control. We want to isolate. We don't want people to see us, right? We don't want people to think we're weak. We don't want people to see us in pain. We don't want to acknowledge that we are vulnerable and that we're hurting. So what do? We isolate. And the thing is you have to remember that you're not alone. You can't be alone. You have to have people in your life who love you, who call you out on your purpose, right? Who remind you who you are and what you were created to do. People who will pull you out of the darkness, right? You know, if something negative happens in your life and you start going to the pity party, right? We all do it. Come on. You know, if you have a pity party and you're the only one at the pity party, that is a boring party. And I'll tell you what, it is a very hard party to leave. You need someone to come to that party, grab you by the hand and say, hey, we are getting out of here. Let's go. Right? Don't be alone. Don't isolate yourself. And, you know, if you feel lonely or you feel like, man, you know, I can't make friends, chances are is you can make friends. I used to struggle with that a lot. I used to be like, man, you know, I'm weird. No one likes me. You get all kind of inward and depressed about being lonely. And the truth is that there are decisions you can make in your life. There are things you can change that will make it so that you will invite other people, right? A lot of times for me, it was just I didn't let people in. And then I complained about how lonely I was, right? But when I started acknowledging it, when I started looking within, when I started spending time in prayer and God began revealing to me, like, dude, people don't hate you. You just have a wall up. Let them in. Right, all of a sudden I began to discover, hey, there are people in my life that care about me, and there are people that see me, and there are people that want to be my friend, and there are people that want to help me. And I guarantee you that when you open your heart, you will find that there are people around you who are ready to be your friend, who are ready to speak life into you, who are ready to get in the trenches with you when you're hurting and help pull you out when you're ready to get out and when you're healed, and friends who will help walk that journey of healing with you. So remember, you're not alone. And you've also got to remember you're not alone too, because one of the biggest lies that we tell ourselves often when we're wounded is, man, no one can relate to my situation. No one feels the way I feel. Man, no one has been wronged the way that I've been wronged. And it's easy to feel like that. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you share a painful experience with a friend and they say something along the lines of, oh man, I completely understand. I completely relate. And doesn't that just bug you? You're like, I don't want you to understand. I don't want you to relate. No one relates. I just want you to tell me that you feel sorry for me too. Right? We all do that. But the truth is that chances are there is someone out there who relates to what you're going through. Right? If you have had a horrible breakup, chances are there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in this world who have experienced a breakup like yours. Like, no, you don't understand. This person was my future. There are probably about 1 million people plus who have experienced that. And when we kind of finally get our marbles together, right? When we just kind of stop losing our minds and we kind of start to get clarity, after we're getting out of just the instant pain, and you realize, hey, maybe I'm not the only person. And I'm going to tell you why it's powerful to recognize you're not the only person. Because, hey, if I'm not the only person that's suffered this, or if I'm not the only person that's been abused like this, chances are someone else has been through this. And chances are they've overcome it. And hey, if someone else has overcome the pain that I'm going through, hey, then I can probably overcome it too. And hey, if I overcome it, then probably I can help some other people overcome it as well. Right? You see that shift from victim, right, to victorious, right? From victim to freedom fighter, where you're now fighting for the freedom of other people who have been through what you've been through. So you got to remember that you're not alone. Man, I remember about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, 3 years ago, I went to this event called The Project. And I made a lot of really good friends that I call my brothers on that. And one of the things that they really pushed me and challenged me with, for those of you watching who maybe don't know me, I have a condition. I have tumors all throughout my bones, several tumors. I've had several surgeries over my life. I've spent a lot of time in hospitals recovering. Most of my childhood was spent in physical therapy. I've been on crutches, wheelchairs, walkers for a large portion of my life. Doctors have told me things like, hey, you got to be careful. There's a chance that by the time you're 25, you might be in a wheelchair. I've been told, hey, you're never going to be an athlete. You're never going to be able to run, lift, do all these different things. So for most of my life, I played it very easy, right? I just like, hey, well, if they've told me that I'm wounded, they've told me I'm sick, they've told me I'm fragile, okay, well, the doctors must know. Please keep in mind, I'm not bashing doctors. It is because of the doctors that I'm here today. It's because of the doctors that I could still walk. I never thought to challenge the future, right, that they set for me. I never thought to challenge the decree that they made over my life and what my life would look like. And when I started hanging out with these brothers in my life and these guys who began to say, hey, I see that doctors have told you that, and I see that you have some physical challenges, but what if you started running? It's like, So I started running. I ran a mile. Then all of a sudden I started running 2 miles, then 3 miles, then 4 miles, then 5 miles. Right, then I got up to 8 miles. Right now I'm trying to train for a marathon. Now, what happened? Was it that my condition changed? No, I still have pain. I still have mobility issues. I still feel it. But you see, I don't identify it with it anymore. As a matter of fact, I oppose it now, right? When I start to feel the pain in my body and when those things start to click, I go into hyperdrive mode. When I'm running, yeah, I'm in pain. Yeah, things hurt. Yeah, things swell up. Yes, I injure myself a lot when I do a lot of these physical activities, but it almost doesn't matter to me because when I'm doing these things, when I'm running, right, or when I'm lifting weights, I'm free, right? I'm free from that identity that was given to me my whole life that said I was limited, that said that because of my physical condition, there were just things I was going to have to accept, right? But when I made the decision to take responsibility for my identity, saying, yeah, okay, that is a very valid data point to take into consideration in my life. But when I made the decision to identify as someone who's healed, I began to make those decisions. I start doing things I never thought I could do. I started lifting. I started going to the gym. As a matter of fact, my friends, right, and this is why it's important to have the right people in your life, they started telling me, like, look, dude, you got to start posting that. Take pictures and send it to us when you go to the gym, right? That was part of my accountability system. Then it started saying, no, you need to start sharing these with everyone. No, you need to start posting videos of you doing this. And I started posting for a very long time on my Instagram, my workouts, right? Not because I'm some fitness influencer. I'm not the biggest guy in the gym. I'm not the most athletic person in the gym. But I'm there every day. I'm probably one of the most consistent ones there, for sure. I'll tell you what, I'm one of the most free people there too, because I've broken that mentality over my life. I've broken ties with that identity that says that I'm sick and that I can't do those things. Man, I'm going to run, I'm going to lift. If you tell me I can't do it, I'm going to go for it. And yeah, I've hurt myself several times. And, I could be a bit stubborn at times and I can maybe go too hard. But guess what? I'm free. And I love the freedom I feel when I do it. And guess what? When I get hurt, I heal and I get better and I get stronger. And I go and I do more and more things that I was told I could never do. So make sure you have the right people in your life who are calling out the best in you, who are telling you what you're able to do, who are calling out the potential in you versus, helping you kind of stay in your same place and coddling you as you go through your hard stuff. Okay. And last but not least is you got to learn to turn your pain into your superpower. Turn your pain into your superpower. You see, and I think this is the most impactful, the most powerful thing someone can do who has been the victim of injustice, who's been the victim of abuse, right? Who's been the victim of someone else or who's been taken advantage of, is learning to take that thing and turn it into a superpower that serves humanity. If you know me, I love superhero movies like that. That's my thing. Those are the movies I love to watch, and I know a lot of them are pretty much the same thing, but I love the hero story. And they say that the origin story of a hero and a villain are the exact same, right? A superhero and a supervillain, they both share the same story. They both go through some traumatic experience, or they experience some abuse or some injustice that marks their life forever. It marks their identity. They kind of bumble around trying to figure out, their life and how they respond to it. And ultimately, the only difference between a superhero and a supervillain is that a superhero takes his trauma and uses it to set other people free. A villain takes his trauma and uses it to destroy himself and to destroy others. Be a superhero. Learn to take your pain, heal, do what you got to do, go through the process. It could take a day, it could take a year, it could take several years, but just keep moving forward, however fast or however slow. Heal. Identify someone who's healed. Push forward, push through, find your healing. Why? So that you can go and set other people free. Right? I grew up without a dad. When I was growing up, I didn't really think much of it, but the older I got, as I tried to figure out what manhood meant, and as I tried to figure out certain things in my life, I started realizing how much that affected me. I started realizing how a lot of the crazy things I experienced would have been much different, or I wouldn't have had to experience them if I had a man in my corner as a father who was looking out for me and who was showing me the ropes. And you see a lot of young men today, the way that they cope with an absent father and the trauma from that is we just get caught up in our vices, right? We turn to video games, we turn to porn, we turn to relationships, right? If you look at womanizers, right, men who just take advantage of women, and you look at their father situation, chances are they got daddy issues, right? That's how men tend to show their daddy issues is through relationships, right? The way they treat women, through their vices, video games, alcohol, weed, porn, all that kind of stuff, right? And so, there's a generation of men my age who that's how we cope. That's how we cope with the trauma of not having a dad. But I remember, in my 20s, I started going to church and I started reading the Bible, and God began speaking to me about being my father and started talking, and I just started learning from all these men of God of what it meant to be a man. And people started taking me under their wings. Rather than getting lost in all these vices and just getting lost in the darkness, I started finding freedom. And then I made a decision like, wow, I bet I can help other men who are just like me find freedom. And through God's grace, I've been able to help serve, mentor, and just help a lot of lost young men, lost young men without a dad, help them navigate life and help them find purpose and help them become, solid young men in their homes, right, in their work, in their churches, in their homes, become great husbands and great fathers. I made the decision in my 20s that I'm not going to allow fatherlessness to be a mark on my life. I'm going to use that to go help other men who are fatherless so they can go and help other men who are fatherless, right? And you might have something different that you resonate with. You might have a different pain, a different wound, a different trauma that resonates with you, but learn to take that thing, remove it from your identity, get rid of that thing in your life, and learn to take it and turn it into your superpower. Ditch the victim mentality. Yes, unfortunate things happen to us in life. Yes, sometimes you get knocked on your butt and you get stuck there for a long time. But you don't have to stay in the mud forever. You don't. And you don't have to listen to a lie that tells you that you don't have what it takes to get up and to be the person that you're called to be and to chase the dreams that God's put in your heart and to have the influence that God has put on you. Right? Ditch the victim mentality. Don't identify as a victim. Identify as a free person. Identify as a person who's filled with purpose. Identify as a person who's created in the image of God. Right? And therefore you have value and you have purpose and you have a reason to be on earth and you are somebody. Right? And that there is a world that needs you to turn on the lights and to shine. So I hope this episode was inspiring for you. Make sure that if it was encouraging to you, maybe share it with a friend. Make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. It really helps us out here. We've got a lot more great content coming to you. Until next time, much love.